So I'm up at the buckwheat that was last summer, and I'm actually here because this morning I removed the hives from it. You see the farmer who's actually resown, well, he's prepared the whole field for maize. There's this bit, that bit in the middle that I showed you before, and the field over there that is all linked. And if you look, I had my hives over there. Now the reason why I left them here over the last autumn and basically winter, and yes, neglected it, was because they're all dead anyway. So I'm going to explain my kind of thoughts on the Asian Hornet, my thoughts on what happened to my hives here, and kind of give you a bit of a way forward that I can do for this year, because obviously retrieving dead out hives is never nice, and I put it off as long as I could because basically there was no need to come and collect them. They were safe here, they weren't going to go anywhere. They're just sitting there, they're kind of all dry, they've got good roofs on, there's just empty combs and nothing else in there, no wax moth, nothing. So because I've been doing the building and because I've been really busy, I just thought, let's leave them there. So I'm going to go back home now and I'm going to talk about the reasons why a lot of people lost a lot of hives this summer. So I'm just unloading all the stuff here. The tyres have gone up to the top of the garden, and these pallets that are here, they will just come inside the building. I was really lucky this morning, a neighbour brought me a load of pallets, absolutely fantastic. They've actually got wooden blocks between them, not compressed wood, so they're going to last for ages, and they're really nice and tidy. There's a lot there. But anyway, I just wanted to give some context on the Asian Hornets that I mentioned before. There's a number of issues here to discuss, and it's a very complicated issue. So we've got Varroa, and that's always going to be an issue with the hives. Some years you get it more, some years you have less, and the regime that I kind of use, I feel works well for me. But last year, because of the incredibly hot weather, it didn't work that well. So I'm not going to say at all that Varroa didn't cause some of those deaths at that apiary. But I know Asian Hornets did. So let me kind of explain why we had such a bad year. First of all, the end of 2021, we didn't have many hornets, or we didn't think we have. We had. So there probably was quite a few, but it didn't really impact our colonies till later in the year. Because I remember saying to my ex-colleague who we used to work with then, well, we're August now and there's no real Asian Hornets in front of the hive. And he said, well, yeah, but, because he knows quite a bit more about it than I do. And I agree with him, because now in retrospect, what was happening was a lot of the nests that we didn't find or didn't see or didn't even know were around probably did okay, and they produced queens, which is the normal life cycle. And then those queens went into the winter, and it was a very mild winter. And then those queens came into the spring early, and we had a very good spring, and the weather was exceptional. So we basically were starting with a blank canvas, as if we'd never had any hornets before. But there was loads there that we hadn't envisaged, and we didn't do much spring trapping because we didn't think, oh, there was a lot last year, therefore there'll be a lot of queens to mop up. So that was the first big mistake. Well, I didn't do much spring trapping. I did do spring trapping, but I didn't do it in a way I should have pursued it as well as I could have done. In other words, changing the traps more often and looking at what we're getting and looking at the amount in the traps. I mean, my spring trapping was changing the trap once every couple of weeks in March and April time when we're just doing our first apiary tour, and that isn't enough when you're trying to keep the founding queens down. Second thing is, we had an absolutely exceptional spring and summer. So every single founding queen that made it through the winter, which was also mild, made it through and flourished. There was an abundance of food. It was easy to find. The weather was calm. We had an amazing spring crop anyway. So when you get good honey crops, there's good amount of bees, there's loads of food. And I'm not saying my bees they were eating necessarily, but they were eating insects in the environment, which we didn't really worry about so much at the start of the year. because everyone's getting honey, and you're catching a few hornet queens, and you think, oh well, this is okay, but you're not getting that many. But you don't think about it. You don't. It doesn't register them, because it's like we are always with Asian hornets. We're closing the door once the horse has bolted from the stable. That's really, unfortunately, what we're doing with Asian hornets, and we should be looking at the cause, not the effect, which we're concentrating on most of the time now. It's a bit like Varroa, yet a different way. We're always dealing with the aftermath. So we got into the summer, and then suddenly the Asian hornets start to appear in numbers in front of the hives. Now that doesn't really have an effect on your colonies initially, because there's not that many bees foraging, and it's the dearth and everything else. But all the time that those Asian hornets are there, and they're growing in numbers, and they really were growing in numbers this year, or last year I should say, because it was really hot, there was loads of insects, there was actually a lot of wasps. And the interesting thing, and I want to mention this now, is that we got to August and the wasps just disappeared. And the reason why the wasps disappeared, it turns out that Asian hornets predate wasps. Well, isn't that a good thing? Well, yes, perhaps it is for us beekeepers, but not in the reason we saw then, because there was nothing else around. There was such an overbalance of Asian hornets, and when I say overbalance, I don't mean there is a good balance. It was just so many Asian hornets in the one areas that we were, that all the other insects, in other words, the ecosystem depressors that Asian hornets are, were doing their job, because the wasps just disappeared. And the other thing that disappeared was the drones. The drones were the first to go. So if you imagine, if you're in a bee colony and you're the queen, she's going to bin out the drones early because there's nothing coming in. So that may be the normal stimulus from the dearth. They'll get rid of the drones, fair enough. But then when there's no bees returning with any messages, that stresses the queen out. And what might that do? That might induce supersedure, because the queen is stressed and she's kind of giving different messages in the colony. She's wanting food, she isn't laying, the bees are going, why aren't you laying? That could be a stimulus for her to be superseded by the bees. And what happens in late supersedure, or even midsummer supersedure, when you've got Asian hornets around? It just doesn't work. So all your queens fail, your colonies fail, not just through Varroa, not just through Asian hornet, but they become queenless because of Asian hornet. So you're not getting that return mating. And as we know, we're now finding out that queens aren't living as long as perhaps we hoped they were. And we're actually seeing a lot of queens that, if we don't follow them really carefully, we're seeing a lot of supersedure anyway in colonies for the last few years. And we're not sure whether it's linked to sperm of the drones or pesticide in the residues. I'm not naming any, I'm not saying anything, because that's just theory. There's no scientific proof about anything. My point is, we're as much up shit creek with this now as we were 5, 10, 12, 15 years ago when it first came into the Gironde in 2004. It hasn't really had any effect. We just had last year, the year that we were dreading for ages, that had finally arrived. That year that we thought that might come, did come. And it was a disaster. So I've lost a lot of colonies because there wasn't any young bees made at the end of the summer in certain apiaries, and there was very poor mating or no mating whatsoever for any supersedure that was caused due to stress on the colony. No matter what you do, and all these people that are kindly suggesting, like, why don't you try the underfloor traps? Why don't you try... The hornets are actually underneath the hives waiting for the bees to come back. No matter what you have, when you have that amount of hornets in the front of your colonies, there is nothing you can do. And to other people that are saying, why don't you go and track them down in the trees? The whole area is gargantuan, and there's the same amount of hornets in front of every apiary. And you know why there was even more hornets? Because they'd eaten everything else. All the wasps had gone, because they did genetic tests on the gut content of Asian hornets from August capture, and they found it was full of wasps, and that's what has been confirmed. What I'm trying to say is, we really need to do something about this, but no one can do anything. We have to do even better early trapping. I've just bought another load of new traps to try. Cost me an absolute fortune. These are the traps made by Jabprod, a company that specialise in hornet traps. Basically, you have a tray and a box, and you put together this funnel type entrance that will give you, let me try and show you. I'll make one up soon. It's like a mini lobster pot, really. And that is like, it's a crate, and I've got the top and the bottom base here, and you put a frame of honey in, and the hornets go in through the front, and they can't get out. So it kind of has the lobster pot effect. But, you know, we are struggling, and we're going to continue to struggle if we have a bad year again this year. I just wanted to have a rant because I want people to really understand that this is not an easy fix solution. It's all very well having a brand new honey house, but when you haven't got many honeybees to run it, it makes everything even more difficult. We just want to keep bees. That's all us beekeepers want to do. And all around the world, we're seeing these major issues like extremes of climate, like Varroa, like Asian Hornets, and we're all kind of scratching our heads wondering what can we do, and we're all trying harder and harder. But it seems as well we're doing even less of a good job because the honey we do harvest is getting even less of a price in a world where everything else is going up in price. It's just crazy. Anyway, from a very ranting beekeeper in Brittany, take care, speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.